stamp. How do you do that?
Well, I don't know about that. I think when you get older, they forgive a lot of things. So I think if I ever make it up to George Burns' age or something, and I just have a cigar in my mouth, and people will really love me then.
You're arguably the most interviewed CEO in history. Is it your ability to communicate that comes from instinct, or is it something you've learned over the years?
Well, I certainly learned to speak in public at one time. I was terrified of speaking in public when I was in high school. I avoided any class that would require it, and in college. And then I finally signed up for a Dale Carnegie course. When I got out of school, I realized I had to talk to people, and I spent $100. I got this little diploma. I proposed to my wife during the term of the course, so I really got my money's worth there. But in terms of public speaking, I really had to force myself on that. In terms of the most important thing is to be able to define which ones you can come to an intelligent decision on and which ones are beyond your capacity to evaluate. You don't have to be right about thousands and thousands and thousands of companies. You only have to be right about a couple. I met Bill Gates on July 5th, 1991. We were out in Seattle, and Bill said, "You've got to have a computer." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "You can do your income tax on it." I said, "I don't have any income. Berkshire doesn't pay a dividend." He said, "Well, you can keep track of your portfolio." And I said, "I only have one stock." I said, and he says, "It's going to change everything." And I said, "Well, will it change whether people chew gum?"
The new investing things going on in the markets. And Greg Wondra from Bakersfield wonders about target date funds. And I wanted to also ask about all the new index funds with a brain. Are those things really adding value?
No, probably not. The S&P 500 index fund is the one to use. That's the one I used in that bet I made for 10 years. It's the one I've told the trustee for my wife to put 90% of the funds I leave her into. The S&P 500 is, I don't know whether it's 80% of the market value of everything you can buy in this country, and it's over. I think it's over 20 trillion, and you're buying America.
Talking privately, they couldn't stop me from the moment I started in school. I think I've always liked to talk.
How do you keep up with all the media and information that goes on in our crazy world and in your world of Berkshire Hathaway? What's your media routine?
I just read and read and read. I probably read 5 to 6 hours a day. I don't read as fast now as when I was younger, but I read 5 daily newspapers. I read a fair number of magazines. I read 10Ks. I read annual reports, and I read a lot of other things too. So I've always enjoyed reading. I love reading biographies, for example.
And you process information very quickly.
Well, I have some filters in my mind. So if somebody calls me about an investment in a business or an investment in securities, I usually know in 2 or 3 minutes whether I have an interest, and I don't waste any time with the ones in which I don't have an interest. And he said, "Well, probably not." And I said, "Well, we'll change what kind of gum they chew." And I said, "Well, then I'll stick to chewing gum and you stick to computers." I don't have to understand all kinds of business. There's all kinds of business I don't understand, but there's thousands of opportunities there. I did understand the Bank of America, and I'll be able. I'm able to do that. I'm able to understand some given percentage. But Ted Williams wrote a book called The Science of Hitting, and in The Science of Hitting, he's got a diagram, shows him at the plate, and he's got the strike zone divided into 77 squares, each the size of a baseball. And he says,
and let me give you a figure that'll blow your mind. I think I bought my first stock when I was 11 years old. It was the first quarter of 1942, shortly after Pearl Harbor. I spent $114.75. Three shares, $114.75. If I put that 114 into the S&P 500 at that time and reinvested the dividends, think of a figure as to what it would be worth today.
Oh man!
Well, it's
okay.
But I just want your audience to think for a second.
Okay.
The answer is about $400,000.
Oh.
So if I, as a little kid, had taken that $114 I'd saved shoveling snow or whatever I'd done, $400,000 today, one person's lifetime. That's America.
I always worry a little bit about even appearing rude because I can tell very, very, very quickly whether it's going to be something that's will lead to something, or whether it's, it's just a half an hour, an hour, or 2 hours of chatter.
When I think you wrote in an annual report, it was in 2009, speaking about the country, about the economy, we are certain, for example, that the economy will be in shambles throughout this year. The problem was that wasn't the complete quote. It led the impression that you were unduly pessimistic about the country. How did you respond to that?
Yeah, well, I wasn't at all pessimistic about the country. In fact, I wrote an op-ed piece for the New York Times in October of 2008, just when the world was kind of falling apart. And I said the world is going to fall apart for a while, but don't worry about it. We're going to come out fine on the other side. And I said, buy stocks. And I've never been pessimistic about the United States. I bought my first stock. If I only swing at pitches in my sweet zone, which he shows there, and he has what his batting average would be, which is 400. If he had to swing at low outside pitches, but still in the strike zone, his average would be 230. He said the most important thing in hitting is waiting for the right pitch. Now, he was at a disadvantage because if the count was 0-2 or 1-2 or so on, even if that ball was down where he was only going to bat 230, he had to swing at it. In investing, there's no called strikes. People can throw Microsoft at me and, you name it, any stock, General Motors, and I don't have to swing. And nobody's going to call me out on called strikes. I only get a strike called if I swing at a pitch and miss. So I can wait there and look at thousands of companies day after day, and only when I see something I understand and when I like the price at which it's selling, then if I swing, if I hit it, fine. If I miss it, it's a strike.
That isn't me. It is the huge tailwind the American economy gives to any equity investor. Now, the market's gone down many times during that time. People have panicked during that time. Headlines have been terrible. It looked like we were losing the war when we first bought it. But America is a powerful economic machine that since 1776 has worked, and it's going to keep working now.
In the spring of 1942, I was 11, and if you remember, you don't remember. No one watching this will remember, but we were losing the war at that time, and we were getting totally creamed in the South Pacific, and the Philippines fell, and the Death March at Bataan, and all of that sort of thing. It was not until the Battle of Midway, which was a little later, that things started turning around. But I was optimistic on the country then, and I've been optimistic on the country ever since. And incidentally, the Dow Jones average then was 117,000 now. It's no one has ever been a success betting against America since 17. But it's an enormously advantageous game. And it's a terrible mistake to think you have to have an opinion on everything. You only have to have an opinion on a few things. In fact, I've told students, if when they got out of school, they got a punch card with 20 punches on it, and that's all the investment decisions they got to make in their entire life, they would get very rich because they would think very hard about each one. And you don't need 20 right decisions to get very rich. 4 or 5 will probably do it over time. So I don't worry too much about the things I don't understand. If you understand some of these businesses that are coming along and can spot things on, if you can spot on Amazon, for example, it's a tremendous accomplishment what Jeff Bezos has done.
You don't want to buy to hold for a year. You don't want to buy with the idea that you could sell it in 2 years or 3 years, necessarily make money. You could lose money that way. But if you buy it for 10, 20, just keep buying the S&P 500 index and forget about all the other nonsense that's being sold to you, because I'll guarantee you one thing about the stuff being sold to you: it will carry bigger fees than what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to think that we don't know if it's 400,000, but that same sort of process or returns won't happen starting right now.
76, and they're not going to be a success in the future doing it either.
I know when the Dow hit 1,000, it was a moment of euphoria. Yet, if I'm not mistaken, you plowed in and you even raised more funds. Has the Dow ever felt to you like it was way too frothy?
There were a couple of times when it looked too frothy to me, but that's in 50 years. And I gave a talk in 1999, and it's gotten reprinted in Fortune subsequently. And there have been a couple of times when it really looked to me like people had gotten too excited. But even then, I knew that the country would, any marker that we'd established, we were going to surpass.